So do you want to sound epic on every single platform? Well, today I've got a whiteboard. I'm going to show you exactly how that happens visually for a mix. So when you've got a mix, to sound amazing on every platform, you're going to need space within your mix. And you need space for a few reasons. So this happens a lot in art, where some of the white space that's around makes use of the colours more. So let's do a diagram of it. If I use, this is your bass in blue. Now, if you're using, let's see, so here you've got your bass going on and you think the bass is sounding good, so you sort of get it going, it's moving all around the screen like that. And then you add some mids in, but the mids are kind of going over the bass because you haven't put any cuts in and stuff, and you haven't got enough space and enough movement. So kind of some of the frequencies that are in the mids are actually clashing with the bass frequencies. So you put that in. And then your tops, you put your tops on, so you've got your hi-hats and stuff. And your vocals, they're bleeding into the tops too because they're SE. And then you kind of put a bit more on and you put some stuff over the sides. And then you think to yourself, well, that bass sounds a little bit weak. I better add a bit more. So you add a bit more in there. And then the mids, you then think, oh yeah, but I'm missing the snare again now. So I need to put a bit more snare in. But then the snare's coming into the tops. And then the tops are getting overtaken, so you're adding more in and more and more. So in the end, you end up with this kind of mess. Although everything's kind of in the right place, it's a mess. Now, ideally, what you want happening is you have your bass, and you've got a really nice bass sound happening here. And so that's nice and tight and in the low end, and it's doing its thing. It's in the right frequency range. And then you have your drums and your guitars and things, and they're doing their little bits here. And then you have your top end where you've got your hi-hats and you've got your splashes, bit of vocals, things like that. They're all doing their thing in the right area. I hope you can see this. And so what happens is, when you go to master a track and there is space in between these instruments, because each instrument is owning its own area. They're not going over each other's areas. They're in the right place spatially when it comes to the stereo image. They're not kind of all over the place. As soon as you start pushing into this and compressing it and limiting it, which is going to happen when you're mastering, this has got space to be able to join together and become really solid so that all of these pieces come together. So that space in the mix can then make the mix sound really loud, because this white space in between all of the instruments is adding depth to the sound. So as long as you've got all of these different things in the right places, as you start pushing them together, you still keep some white space around them. And it means that you can get a track sounding loud, you can keep the depth, and it gives a much better impression to the ear. What I'd also say about this diagram here is, when you're only doing a certain amount of things in certain areas, you can hear which areas are weak. And then you might say to yourself, okay, well, I need to get rid of that snare drum there because it doesn't sound very good compared to everything else. And I still only have this space to cover up. So I'm going to get a better snare sound in that covers up for those 2 snares that I had going on. So I've just got a bass and snare now. I don't need to have 5 snares. Because what happens is here on this diagram, when you've got loads and loads of things happening all over the place, as you can see, it's a bit of a mess anyway. You start crushing into this area that's got no space, and it has the reverse effect of the nice open mix. You've got no depth, it sounds really flat, and everything gets crushed together, and your ears just gets crushed as it's listening. So you don't get a deep sound and you don't get air around the sound. So everything just sounds congested. It just doesn't sound right to the ear. And then you're wondering why you can't get your mix sounding as good as this guy here, who has got some space and made sure that each instrument that's playing is doing its thing in the right area. So you think about the drums, you think about the mids, you think about the tops. You haven't got them bleeding into each other when you're mixing. You're kind of making sure everything's got its own space and its own place. So keep that in mind when you're mixing, because when you're mixing, when you come to mastering, if there's space and if all the instruments are sounding good within their space, I can get it super loud, I can get it sounding really deep and have that real dynamic sound, but also be really loud and as loud as anybody else out there. The great people at doing this, if you listen to great mix engineers, they are great at doing this. If you listen to anything by Spike Stent, he does this. Anything by Daft Punk, those kind of guys, they're really good at doing this. And most people that are good mix engineers can get this sounding great, because they'll redo instruments, they'll do cuts in different places to get everything working and have some space and doing its own thing, because each one of these is a focus point. So they never do this. This is messy. This isn't what you want to do. So keep that in mind and you'll sound good on every single platform. If you like this kind of thing, please give me some comments below. I'd like to hear what you think about this explanation. Please subscribe. Thanks for watching. Bye.